Okay, I've started it. It's working on it.
There we go. Hi, Thelma.
Radio is not connected yet. It will be in just a minute.
Hi, Thelma. Can you hear
Your
us?
audio, Thelma, is working. So how are you? Are you okay, Thelma?
Thelma, can you hear us?
You.
No. Hi, Darlene.
And it takes a minute before their audio gets kicked in. So just get your picture first, and then their audio kicks in, and then you can talk to them. Now, Darlene should be able to hear us. Are you okay, Darlene?
I can hear you. So
Good.
don't talk about me.
Thelma, can you hear us yet?
I think Thelma's having a little bit of a problem over there.
Yeah, I think so. Well, looked like you had a good day yesterday, Darlene.
It was nice. They say that was the second busiest day in the history of Dogwood.
Oh my gosh.
Wow.
Oh my God.
There were people everywhere. It really, if the tram had been running, it wasn't because there was so much water going across the roads, you know, where the tram goes. We followed the tram trail, but the path was so packed between bicyclists and walkers that it was just ridiculous.
So you probably had a hard time avoiding people, didn't you?
Yeah, we did. Well, we cut over on the grass a lot, but
yeah,
it was still fun.
We've never been there. It's one of those places I want to go, but we'll have to wait.
Yeah.
I won't know when I think it's going to be too crowded. Hi,
Yeah.
Cindy.
Hello there.
How are you?
Hanging in there. And you?
We're good. Well,
we're hanging in there too. More ways than one.
Hanging in there in a lot of ways. I don't know if you heard about his fun.
A little bit.
How's he doing?
It's not been a fun week. Wednesday, I had my procedure thing at the hospital and spent the night there Wednesday night. And then I get a little baggage to drag around until next Tuesday. And that's been not much fun.
He has an extra appendage until next Tuesday morning.
Yeah. Well, hopefully it'll be, I think the good part is I don't have any more pain from the kidney stones on the right side. So I think we just sort of got that right at the right time. Now we have to deal with the big one on the left side. But we'll talk about that Tuesday when I go back to the doctor.
So Thelma, are you hearing anything yet?
Now.
Yes.
Yay! Now Thelma's there.
Yay!
I don't know what's going on, but anyway, I'm on now.
Good. Hi,
Good.
Pearl.
Hi. Ron's sitting back behind me.
Is he really back there or is he asleep somewhere?
He just woke up.
What?
We had a long nap.
That's good.
Too hot to be outside.
It is too hot to be outside.
Yeah, I actually turned on the air conditioner.
Yeah, we turned our air conditioner on too.
My air conditioner's probably been on 2 months.
Oops. I can't.
You're muted, Ann. I can't hear you.
There. Am I on now?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I didn't mute me, so I don't know what happened.
I didn't either. I don't know what happened there.
You can-
I just thought maybe you got tired of hearing me.
Ah. Now,
Are you
you have to admit, you've escaped a few times. You went to a ball game when I couldn't go to the ball game, and you went to church this morning when I had to watch it on TV, and all these fun things that I'm just sitting here missing. And well, anyway, I won't dwell on it.
Oh,
It actually was really fun to get to go to a Webb City baseball game yesterday, high school baseball game. That was fun.
Oh,
Out at Joe Becker, and we could spread out all over the place, and it was just fun.
yeah, that was a bet.
did they win?
Well, no, they lost by 1, but I didn't. We were also glad to be out and being playing again. It didn't care. Nobody mattered. It didn't worry anybody.
Yeah. Well, that's good. Yeah.
Never
Are you,
realized-
Thelma?
I'm good, thank you. You all right?
Yeah. Did you have a good weekend?
Well, yeah, for being shut in, it's good.
So everything's still shut up out there?
Yes, yes. We can't even talk to anybody on the porch now, out on
Oh.
the parking.
Oh gosh,
Yeah,
that's sad. I wonder
has
why
there
you
been a
can't.
problem? I mean,
Is
no, nobody's sick or anything. It's just one of the rules from headquarters.
Oh
okay.
gosh. Well,
Hmm.
that's sad, isn't it?
Yes.
Oh.
Virginia's been in quarantine for almost 2 weeks. She gets out Wednesday.
Hmm. We don't have any word on when we get out.
So she's been in a room. Did she have
Yeah.
symptoms or something, or?
She had to go to the hospital and get her tubing changed.
Oh,
Yeah. She's supposed to get done every 2 months, and this time we waited an extra month. But she's doing okay.
well, good. So anything different with folks at your house, Cindy? Parents or moms?
Mom is still with us. We're making plans for her to go home. So
Okay.
we're trying to talk out, the requirements for what would be best
Mhm.
to make that successful for her
Yeah.
to do. And she has a bunch of appointments coming up so that we can,
See for sure. Yeah.
exactly. And Steve's mom, her sewer line is still, I don't know why I'm just one of those that I just want to get this done.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you have to coordinate between a plumber and a digger, and the
Yeah.
weather's been weird.
oh,
There's been a lot of rain and stuff. So
Yeah.
maybe that's part of the reason why it's just going on too long for my
Yeah.
taste.
I think that's the basic problem that Dale and Beverly are also having with their sewer system is the weather and coordinating somebody to come in and dig and clean up the mess that's there and then redo it all,
Right.
which is basically what y'all are gonna have to do, it sounds like.
Well, there's even talk about, they need to run it from the back of the house out to the alley. So
Mhm.
it's a longer distance and there's obstacles in the yard.
Oh,
Like
God.
they may have to take out a stories building and
Uh,
fence and all
so too
kinds
many people to deal with, isn't it? Yeah.
has anybody heard from Dell and Beverly? They weren't there today.
I haven't heard anything that is new. I mean, Richard had talked about them last week a little bit, and they're just still having those sewer problems, and they don't want to do anything else hardly with that, with all that hanging over their head, seems.
Oh,
Are there any other prayer requests that anybody? I've already taken note here of Cindy's mom and Steve's mom, and course, Richard and Sue are traveling, so we had, as we said last week, we put them on the top of the list. And then my kidney stone fund continues. And so are there any other prayer requests?
You met Denny that was in our Sunday school class.
Mm-hmm.
He asked prayer us to remember him in prayer this morning. I don't know what they're doing, but they are dealing with his hearing problem, and he said pray that it works, but he didn't say what they're doing.
I hear somebody else, but I don't know.
I couldn't hear the last part after what Pearl said.
Who's talking?
I don't know who that is. I can't hear it.
Oh, well,
We may have some interference here. I don't know.
yeah.
Okay.
So Mike, it's the first few seconds. Are you in a lot of pain?
No, not since not kidney stone pain. I'm basically carrying around a catheter, and every time I move, it pinches and various things. And then I also have spasms occasionally, and that's why we're sitting in a different position. I'm in Ann's recliner, which is about the only place I can sit and not have a spasm. So hopefully in the next 30 minutes or so, I won't be blanking out. But if I do, Ann's gonna take over. So she's my backup person here.
As long as he's reclining or in bed, I mean, he's in the recliner or in bed, he's fine. But when he stands up and tries to move, or if he sits on straight chairs, he ends up getting those spasms that just burn like the dickens.
So I end up standing up to eat my meals in the kitchen.
Oh my.
And that's sort of odd, but it seems to work. And so hopefully all this will be straightened out by Tuesday.
I mean, they would have had it out earlier, except that the doctor's office was closed Friday and Monday, with it being the holiday. So he had to wait till Tuesday morning. So.
Okay, if there's not another prayer request, we'll go ahead and quickly have a prayer, and then we'll jump into this and see how much we can cover. I hope we can cover it all, but if we get cut short, we'll do the best we can. I'm not used to doing this, and an old school teacher like me sometimes gets too long-winded and loses track of time. But we'll see what we can do, and let's go ahead and have our prayers. Father, we thank you for making this Sunday school class a possibility, Lord, by way of Zoom. And we just thank you for these friends of ours that have joined, and just pray that you would bless each one on this Memorial Day weekend. We ask you to be with Richard and Sue as they travel later back toward home, and you'd give them safe travel. But before then, that you would give them the time with their family, Lord. Yes, thank you for all you've done for me with the kidney stone problem, and pray you'd see me through with it, Lord. We just ask for help with Cindy's mom and her plans to go home, that you would be the guide and give them wisdom to make right choices, and help her to accept whatever the choices are, that they can work together to make it as smooth as possible. Be with Steve's mom as well, and all of her sewer problem that they're having, and just pray that they'd come out with the right solution there, that it would be effective and not so expensive, and would happen soon, Lord. I know they're tired of fooling with it. I just pray to you to be with Danny and his hearing problem, and just pray that he would get the right care that he needs, and right treatments, doctors, technicians, everybody involved, and that might come to a resolution. Just continue to lift up the president and the governor and all the people making decisions for our country and state and local, and just pray that you'd guide them, that they would listen and follow your guidance. Just thank you now for your love and care in Jesus' Okay, let's jump into what I've put together. I tried to follow Richard's normal plan as much as I could, but might be a little bit different, but we'll just see what we can do. Would someone read Colossians 1:18 for me?
He is also head of the body, the church, and he is the beginning, the firstborn from the dead, so that he himself might come to have first place in everything.
Okay, so I think as a way of starting, as this is sort of the theme that, or at least goes along with the theme, Jesus is the head of it all. So he is the one that matters. And we need to keep that in mind as we go through the rest of the lesson. The theme, and I hope you got your sheets that I sent out, believers should accept and encourage other believers to facilitate unity. Okay. And that's part of it as well. Okay, there are 3 sections here. The first one section is called Stop Judging. Let's hear what Jesus had to say about judging in Matthew 7:1-2. Somebody read that one for me.
Judge not that you be not judged. For with the judgment you pronounce, you will be judged. And with the measure you use, it will be measured to you. Why do we see the speck that is in your brother's eye, but do not notice the log that is in your own eye? Or how can you say to your brother, let me take the speck out of your eye, when there is the log in your own eye? You hypocrite, first take the log out of your own eye, and then you will see clearly to take the speck out of your brother's eye. To what?
No, you're fine. That's fine.
Okay.
I was really focusing on the first 2 when he was telling people to avoid judging others. What exactly does judging mean? That's not on your script, by the way, and that's one of those rabbits I'll begin to chase, I guess. But what exactly does judging mean?
One of the things as I looked at the quarterly that it made me think of it in a little bit different way than I had, we know a court judge and all that kind of stuff, but it just made me think of those ways. It's like if somebody does something in a different way than you do, you just think, well, my way's better. I mean, that in a way that's judging. And I had never really thought about, as it was talking about those personal preferences, it's like we look down on somebody if they don't do it the way we do, or they don't like what things we like, or the way we think it should be done. And that was an interesting, a little bit different way of judging than I'd thought of before.
Right, I think that's right. Go ahead.
The quarterly says that he was teaching against the religious hypocrisy that was common in that day. Those hypocrites held others to a standard they refused to keep themselves.
Right.
And still judged others for falling short. So, that's that two-faced, speaking 2 different things out of the same mouth, kind of.
Yeah, trying to hold
hypocrisy and judgment.
Right, trying to hold you to one standard that they're not even willing to follow themselves.
Yeah.
That's part of it. But then the word judging today, we think of judging like judging a contest or judging a race or something like that. But this judging seems to have a little more taste of condemnation to it, or better than thou kind of attitude to it. So it creates division between people. You're not as good as I am, or something you're doing is not the way I do it, or something to that effect. Okay, let's look at Romans 14 now, the main focus of what we're doing today. Someone read 14, just the first verse for me.
Accept anyone who is weak in faith, but don't argue about disputed matters. One person believes he may eat any, while one weak eats all vegetables. One who eats does not look down on one who does not eat, and one who does not eat does not judge the one. I think I read 3, but
Oh, that's okay.
can't-
That'll be all right. The first verse he's talking about seems to be drawing a distinction between doctrine, which is something that should remain solid and never change, and practice or methods that can be adapted. You probably heard, you're old enough to hear the expression, like I've heard, there's more than one way to skin a cat. You know, well, what does that mean? That means there's more than one way to do something that's still okay. It's going to get it done. So is one way better than the other? Who's to say? You know, Paul seems to be saying that some things are solid and you can't and you shouldn't want to change those. But then there are other things that are the gray areas that may be okay to do it this way or may be okay to do it that way. They both may be okay. He emphasized that the weakness is likely a matter of opinion. And we all have opinions. We all like what we like and we all don't like what we don't like. I mean, it's just the way we are. We're different from each other. We're different from other ages. We're different from other races and groups of people with experiences of all kinds. So those kinds of differences, is that enough to break us up? You know, I think that's the point of all this. Uh, is that something that should break up unity in a church? Is what we're getting at. And then he goes on in these verses
It's
that
what's broken up many churches. It's
it
those
has.
little things that are
Right.
broken. It's what breaks up many churches. And it's also what gives us a bad name in the world. You know, it's because we don't solve our own. I mean, there's certain things that you can't compromise on, but you know, there's a lot of things that you might like one thing and I might like it another way, but it doesn't mean it's not a definite that has to be there to be called a Christian.
Right, right.
anyway, it works both ways. And if we could see both sides of it, if we need to be very sensitive to other people's feelings of what they think, you know, instead of being overly critical of something. We don't need to criticize. We just need to practice loving each other. But if sometimes critical on the other side of that coin, though, of the person that's receiving the criticism may be overly sensitive, and we on the other side we have to practice. We have to being sensitive, not being so sensitive in ourselves, because that's internalizing that. And you're saying me, it's about me. And on the other hand, criticizing somebody, you're saying you're placing yourself above the person as you think you're superior to that person if you can criticize them.
When you think about, you know, he talked about the weekend faith, and I think, you know, there's many things now that I'm convicted of that I wasn't when I was new in the faith, when I was young in the faith, and just there's certain things that for me I know it's wrong because of my relationship with God. It might be wrong for me, but I can't say that you know, God may not have convicted that other person that that's something that might not be a problem for them. That might not be something that they're convicted about yet. And you know, I think that's something that I need to remember.
About how they eat, where they eat vegetables or where they eat meat, you know. And we're too quick to say, oh, that's crazy, you need meat, or vice versa. Of the person that only eats vegetables says, that's crazy, you should not be eating meat. But, we in our world today, there's a lot of vegetarians and we should respect them, but they should respect us too.
Hey, does anyone know what the food customs were in those days that he's referring to?
Well, it had to be a lot of the kosher, there were a lot of Jewish dietary laws. And I'm sure as a Christian, when they became Christian or when the Gentile Christians, they hadn't had those same laws. And that was not one of those things that God says you shall not, it was those dietary things. I think to me that was what it was. Or even the food that they were eating things that might have been sacrificed to idols or something, or to that. And it was, I think that was what was being really talked about during that.
Yeah,
Do you
you're
think,
right.
I quite get that, did you think that it was okay for them to eat that meat that had been sacrificed to idols? Because I didn't like anything either way. It sounded like he thought any of it was okay.
Well, it sounded like to me that he wasn't judging one way or the other, that it was between them and God. And that's going to be part of the rest of the lesson here. I'm getting a little ahead of myself. Who is the head of the church, as was read in that first verse?
God. Yeah.
Jesus, God. Okay. So, and let me not get ahead of myself a little bit here. Let's go on and look at, let's read verses 2 through, let's see, I think we covered that part, talking about the food issues. Let's go on with this next section. Honor God. Read Romans 14, 5 through 6 for me.
One man regards one day above another, another regards every day alike. Let every man be fully convinced in his own mind. He who observes the day observes it for the Lord, and he who eats does so for the Lord, for he gives thanks to God. And he who eats not for the Lord, he does not eat and gives thanks to God.
Okay, so here's the second point of contention. First, the point about the food. Now, the point about observing certain days. Okay, and some observe certain days as special, and some observe no days whatsoever. Who's right? And whose job is it to decide who's right? Okay, what does it say about the relationship of the person with God?
We need to be giving thanks to him when we do it. We need to be doing what we do for the Lord.
Yes, that's the main point, I think. It says in verse 6 there, he who observes the day observes it for the Lord. In other words, his motive is to honor God in that observation of that day or that special event. So if his motive is to praise God, give thanks to God on a certain day for a certain event, then that's fine. But if the other person isn't convicted the same way, or their background isn't from the same background as Jews and Gentiles were quite different in those days, that's okay too. Okay. So what are the motives and convictions that make any day holy?
Are we doing it for the glory of God?
Exactly.
Is it,
Yeah. Why are we doing it? Why do we observe these days that we observe? Why did the early Jews observe certain days?
Honor God.
honor God. That was their whole purpose in the beginning. And they wanted to continue that even in later times.
Well, and that's what we're looking at here. I mean, that's why this is here, because, you know, the Jews had all those different feast days and all, all the things that, you know, the ways that they did, very specific ways that they did things, lots of different feast days that they had throughout the year, and to remember things that God had, I mean, they did that to honor God. They did it to remember things that God had done for them, you know.
Exactly.
And so you can see, I mean, that had been important to them. I mean, that had been their custom. That had been important to them. And so you have Gentile Christians coming in, those feasts, they don't have the history with those feasts. And so, you know, it's like whatever, you know, if you observe that day, don't just, I mean, I think about us, you know, like how many times do we just go through Easter or Christmas because it's Easter or Christmas? It's the 25th of December, you know, or do we celebrate Christmas to honor God? You know, it's easy to do anything, whether it's, you know, I mean, we've been told to do communion, you know, but do we do that to honor God, or do we just do it because that's the day the church does it?
Yeah.
Right. We have less than 10 minutes, so let's try to speed things up a little bit here. Let's look at the section verses 7 through 8, I believe it is.
Mhm.
Okay, just to save time, I'll go ahead and read 7 through 8. For not one of us lives for himself, and not one dies for himself. For if we live for the Lord. Or if we die for the Lord. Therefore, whether we live or die, we are the Lord's. Okay, and hidden in those couple of verses are a couple of the main points I hope we can get across with this lesson. What was the foundation principle of Paul's logic here in those couple of verses?
Whatever we do it to honor the Lord.
Mhm.
Right, exactly. Who do we belong to?
God.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not
Yeah.
about us.
It's not about us. And so to me, and since our time's running sort of short, there's two main points here. We're not to judge others because we're not the one authorized to judge anybody.
Mm.
God is the one, you know, we are servants of God, and he is the one we answer to. We don't answer to other servants. We answer to God. And so it's God's place to judge us. We're not to judge others, as I think a big part of what this lesson is. And the main motivation for all that we do every day is to honor God.
Mhm.
You know, he is our owner in a sense. He is our master. And we are to focus our daily life, you know, and everything that we do should be something to honor God. Okay, let's someone read Romans 6, 1 through 11, and let me see if I can remember how this ties into the whole thing.
1 through 11.
Yes.
What shall we say then? Are we to continue in sin that grace might increase? May it never be. How shall we who died to sin still live in it? Or do you not know that all of us who have been baptized into Christ Jesus have been baptized into his death? Therefore we have been buried with him through baptism into death, in order that Christ was raised from the dead through the glory of God, through the glory of the Father, so we too might walk in newness of life. For if we have become united with him in the likeness of his death, certainly we shall be in the likeness of his resurrection, knowing this, that our old self was crucified with him, that our body of sin might be done away with, that we should no longer be slaves. For he who has died is freed from sin. Now, if we have died with Christ, we believe that we shall also live with him, knowing that Christ, having been raised from the dead, is never to die again. Death no longer is master over him. For the death that he died to sin once for all, but the life he lives to God. Even so, consider yourselves to be dead to sin, but alive to God in Christ Jesus.
Okay, how does all that tie into this lesson of accepting? The title of the lesson was Accepting. How does that tie in? I put as a question there, how should viewing God as owner change a person's perspectives on worship practices? How should it impact how believers treat one another?
If you have a critical attitude, your heart is not in the right place to be worshiping. Your heart is here if you've got that critical attitude in your heart.
Okay, that's right. You know, we've got to remember who our boss is, in a sense, who our master is, and let love for each other and love for God be the rule to keep us on track on a day-to-day basis. Okay, we've got about 2 minutes, I think. So we've got one little passage there, Romans 14, 9 through 12. Let me get back there. For to this end, Christ died and lived again, that he might be Lord both of the dead and the living. But you, why do you judge your brother? Or you again, why do you regard your brother with contempt? For we shall all stand before the judgment of God, judgment seat of God. And let me see if I can turn the page. For it is written, as I live, says the Lord, every knee shall bow to me, and every tongue shall give praise to God. So then, each one of us shall give account of himself to God. Okay. So let me hush a little bit. Now we've got about a minute and a half or so. What
Mine
did we
says
learn
3
from this
minutes.
lesson? Say it again, Ann.
My time says 3 minutes.
Oh, good. Okay.
There's a couple of verses I wish they'd gone ahead, and I looked to make sure it wasn't next week's lesson, but I wish they'd gone ahead and done like 13 and 20. And 13 says, therefore, do not judge one another, but rather determine this, not to put an obstacle or a stumbling block in a brother's way. And I just think about so many times that I've seen disagreements in the church over things that were not important. They became a stumbling block. They became an obstacle to people. And we've lost members, and people left the church or even left even being, worshiping God. And I think, it's just a real warning there. And it's, verse 20 was a good one. It's like it said, do not tear down the work of God for the sake of food, basically. But, don't tear down the work of God for your preference is what I really took from the lesson, and who cares if someone can worship with this song, who am I to say that that's wrong? Or if somebody can worship with this hymn, who am I to say that's wrong? It's their attitude. If they're worshiping God, that's what's important. That's the only thing that's important.
Yeah, that's exactly right. One thing I've learned over the years, when somebody does something that I disagree with, especially in the church, I try to love them more than condemn them, and to wait on God to either prove me right or prove him right or whatever. In other words, everybody is at a different growth stage in their life towards sanctification. And that person may be a little immature, or that person may be more mature than I am. And maybe my mind will be changed, So I try not to be so quick to judgment.
And if we got a few seconds, I don't have time to read this, but I read this several years ago, and I keep a I keep a sticky note in that part, and it's Oswald Chambers' daily devotional, my utmost for his high.
Mhm.
If you'll Google Oswald Chambers, June the 17th, and read that, it is quite an eye opener. And every time I get close or criticize somebody, or God brings it to my attention that I've criticized somebody or been, judgmental in any way, I go back and I read that, and I feel so ashamed. It's an eye opener, and I keep it handy because it's so easy to be criticized